Well, hello and welcome. I'm really excited to be getting into today's presentation on the neatMon Open Development Platform. It'll be a technical presentation, so I hope that you'll be excited as much as I am to learn about what we have to show you. The neatMon cloud platform and its API are open source, so you can see how things work and integrate it into your own system. Also, we'll be talking a little bit about the support and documentation that's available for you as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to let us know. The Open Development Platform is based off of the automated monitoring nodes, which can connect in a variety of ways: satellite, cellular, Wi-Fi, and they can also connect to Bluetooth sensors and wired sensors in the field, and connect to any third-party API or cloud app. The question often comes up about data path. How does the data get from the device to the cloud? And that communication and how that works is often a mystery. So that's what we're going to try and talk about today, and hopefully get you off on the right start. So we're going to be going over a little bit of the topology and kind of what it looks like, but we'll talk about the tool chain and how to get started. Your system will likely be different, and that's good. But this will be a good way to get started. And then if you have any questions or need any additional help, we're here for you. We have professional services available as well. So here's some of the resources that we're going to go over today. We're going to be getting started with the wiki. We have a wiki where you can find information and support details as well. And then we're also going to be going over how to get the source for this project. You can see here in the address. We have an open source API, which is available for anyone to see and use. It might be useful for you in your own project as well. But then again, if you don't have all the answers, feel free to email us at info@neatmon.com. So the basis of our project here is that we actually use Docker. We use Docker and Docker Compose to orchestrate bringing up containers and also kind of the integration of all the different services. You may have a different services in your tool chain as well, but this will at least give you a place to get started in your development environment and bring it up for testing. And then if you have any other questions or need help bringing something else into production, feel free to let us know. Finally, the containers that we're using, we have a Node.js and Express server and Mongo database backend. We've also connected this to MySQL backends and other backends as well. This is what we provide just for simplicity. It's easier to test and see kind of what's going on and get into the nuts and bolts of it. And then finally, we're going to go over how to test this using Postman and curl. We'll also see kind of how the device is set up as well. All right, so we're going to get started with the setup of the project. And first, we're going to need to clone the API. So you can find the address in the presentation notes. Once you go to the GitHub page, you're going to go ahead and click on code. And then down here, you copy the link to get to the project. And then I'm going to come over here to my terminal. We're going to go over a couple tools that you're going to need to get started. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my favorite folder. And then I have created a folder inside of here for storing the source code from today's project. And the command I'm going to go ahead and use is git clone. And then I'm going to copy our link from GitHub over. So once I type that in, it's going to go ahead and clone that down. And now you see I have the neatMon API project. So I'm going to open that up. And now if I list the contents of this, I should probably list all of them so you can see kind of everything else that's here. So I would like to take a second to just kind of go over some of the source code here and get you familiar with the directory structure inside of the neatMon API project. The nuts and bolts, or the source for what we're trying to achieve, is located inside of the server folder and the index.js. This is basically the main file for all of the API. This contains the Node Express server, and it wanted to break down kind of what you're seeing inside of it before you had a chance to really review it. So we have it broken down into various methods, and starting with the post methods, these are the methods that are used by the device to send data to the server. And then we have the get methods down here separated by this little comment block. And the get methods are pretty self-explanatory. But to start from the top, we have a status route that returns the status of the API. We also have a device status route where if you provide the parameter being the GUID, that returns the last insert into the database from that GUID. So it's essentially the latest data. And then we also have a route to get the data from one of your posts. If you supply the post ID, which is the response that the server provides when you do a post or when the device does a post. And this actually will dump the output of that post. So that is the bulk of the server. There's some other setup here, but if you have any questions about anything in here, feel free to let us know. You'll notice that the license for this is MIT, so feel free to use this in any capacity you find fit. Hopefully it's educational for you, but you can also use it in a commercial fashion as well. So we have a configuration file here. This is where the configuration is set up for the MongoDB. If you were to use this in a production environment, you would definitely want to change all of this. And this is just for the sake of demonstration, and so that you can come in here and see it. And then also we have the init mongo.js file here. This is the initialization, and it creates the users and the database. Our collection that we create for the size for this demonstration is actually a capped collection. This might not be the best setup for a production environment, especially because it uses capped collection. That means that as soon as the database grows in size and expands to this size, well, that essentially means that it will overwrite old data, and that might not be desirable. Then finally, inside of the docs directory, you'll see an example post body. You can use that for testing, as we'll get into later in the presentation. You can actually copy this and use this inside of the Postman commands, and this provides some sample data as well. So this is actually a block of data from one sensor. This is our temperature and relative humidity sensor, number 0, 1, and 2. So this is 3 different temperature and relative humidity sensors connected to one ID on the field. And again, most of this is actually documented in our wiki. So if there's any questions about it, I would suggest to go there, just kind of get a sense of what's going on. And then lastly, I just want to talk about the Docker Compose. The compose file is actually a convenience method for bringing up each of the containers. So right here, we have the MongoDB container. And if you had this in a production environment, maybe you would have your Mongo database separate from your API, and then you wouldn't actually need this, and you can adjust the API to connect to your new URL, for example. So you could put that into the environment file that we talked about inside the config directory. Anyway, so when you're bringing up, this is basically what's happening is that it's bringing up these two containers, the API and the database. So a requirement for running some of this project are you're going to need make. Make is a build optimizer, so you can run basically scripts for installing. We use it just to simplify bringing up the Docker instances. And then you also need Docker as well. So you'll need to go into and learn how to install those for your own system if you don't have them already. But let's go ahead and get into the nuts and bolts of it. If we go ahead and cat the make file, you'll see that we have the make file. And now we have a couple different commands that we can run here. So we can run the make and then run command, and that will bring up all of the containers. We can also run prod down or prune. So you can run make prod down, which brings down all the containers or shuts them down, and then prune finally, if there's no running containers, gets rid of all the storage. Careful with that one, because that one will actually remove any storage for any Docker container that's not currently active. So for our instance today, we're going to run the make run command, and that goes ahead and brings up the containers. Now it says it's going to go ahead and recreate the API that we actually had these running already, and then they're up. So now from this place on, we can go ahead and start testing the API and writing data to it and reading. So you notice here in the background, I actually have a device already connected to my computer. I'm going to go ahead and connect. Great. So when it starts up, we want to go ahead and press C. You'll have the option to press C to get into the command prompt. And then from here, you will want to check out the network configuration. You'll notice here, we already have the HTTP server, path, and port configured, but in your own instance, you may want to do this differently. The only requirements are that you have the API device and that the number string afterwards here is the same as the GUID listed in the device when it turns on. You can actually see it when it's going through the boot right here. Okay. So as long as those are the same, you'll be fine. And then finally, the HTTP server. Since we're doing this in our local environment, you would want to press 1 to get to the option to change the configuration. And then from here, you actually need to get your IP address. So let's go run over to our shell. I'm going to open a new tab. And I'm going to type the command to get my configuration, but if you're on a Windows machine, obviously you would do this a little bit differently. So let's see, here we are. Okay, so in this network, we have locally, if I'm going to connect to this via Wi-Fi, it would be 192.168.1.42. So I just go ahead and type 192.168.1.42. And now you can see the HTTP server has been updated. The path is set correctly. It's got the correct path. And the port number is the same port number as what we would require for the Docker container, but you can change this to whatever you have in your instance. So finally, we can go back, go ahead and hit exit. And then finally, assuming you've already done the sensor configuration, you can go ahead and hit save and quit. Now, there is a nice little utility we've provided here if you're doing development. If you press 3 for utilities, there's an option here, option number 5, which is for demo mode. So that means that you can actually have the device connected without any sensors, and that can send some sample data. That way you don't have to have a bulky set of sensors for testing. Okay, so that's kind of how you set it up. Finally, when you go ahead and save and quit, that brings everything up. You can see it turning on. So now let's go ahead. I'm going to show you how to run some of these test commands just as it would from the device. Now, we're going to do it from another program called Postman. And we're going to go over kind of what it looks like on the device. You can also use Postman to test your API without a device. So I think it's a very useful, lightweight way of doing things. That way you don't have to have the hardware set up with a USB connected to your computer, et cetera, et cetera. So first one I'm going to show you is the get for the status. And so if we go to localhost and the port number 1330/API/status, hit send. You notice that we'll get the API is working in the current date time. Great, this means that everything's working and we're getting a response back from the API. Now, the next one we can do is to send some sample data. And we actually have a sample data provided in the GitHub source code. And I'm just going to go over that right now just so you can kind of see what the body looks like. Now you notice here we have the GUID of the device, and then down below we actually have the ID. And the ID here is the last 5. So a little secret here, you can actually shorten this to make this shorter, or you can have it the full length. And finally, we get into the values. And this is all documented for you as well in the wiki, but you can see here we have the value object, and then we have an array of values that are listed down below. And in this particular instance, we have quite a few different temperature and humidity sensors connected to the same device. We can see temperature, humidity, and timestamp values, which are offset from the time that it actually synchronized with the server. So let's go ahead and hit send, and then we'll see the response. Okay, so we get a response back here. We have the ID of the insert, and we have the time. So this response is telling us the current time right now. And if we come back over here to the terminal, we'll actually see the request come in. We'll see the post content, and then we see the output as well. Now this is pretty interesting. Now we can take the ID if we want to. We can go and do a request to /API device data, and then you can put the request ID there. Now notice this is a get. Oh, and you know what? We actually don't even need anything in the body. Oh, that's the response body, sorry. Yeah, the body's empty. So it's just the ID in the parameters of the address, and then you just hit send. And you notice here's our request response that we just sent over, returned it back to us, and it tells us the date that it was responded, that it was actually inserted in. Come back over here, we can actually see that request being dumped out into the terminal for your sake. Then lastly, just let's take a look at what data would look like if we were just to query one of our devices. So if we go to API device status and then type in the GUID of the device that we want to get the data for, excuse me, we can go ahead and do that, hit send, and you'll notice we get a request response here, and there's the latest data from that device. Okay. So now that kind of concludes our technical demonstration of how to get up the containers. I just want to go over a couple of things in case you're wondering how this works if there's something that's not working. Now, remember I did the make command at the beginning, the make run command. Now, if things are not running, you can always come into your terminal, open up a new terminal, and you can do these commands just to see what is running. So you can type docker PS, and this will tell you the containers that are actually running. And you notice here we actually have 2 containers that are up and running. Because my terminal font is so large, it's kind of hard to see, but making it wider allows us to see it a little bit better. In any case, you can also make it a little bit smaller in your text. So now we have these 2 containers up and running, and we can see that they've been running for about 8 minutes now, and that's about it. Now, if we wanted to stop one of the containers, we could do that here with the command docker stop, and then you can reference the container and then stop it. Or, if you still have that up and running in the background here, you can just press Control-C, and then you can run the docker PS command again. You can see nothing's running. Well, I hope that this presentation has been very helpful for you. And if you have any further questions, feel free to let us know. We're always here to help.